pictures are about, because, no, those three. Or maybe could I do something for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Well, maybe start with talking about where you were born and that type of thing.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to look for.
Okay.
And that's when my folks went to visit a friend in Cottonwood.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was my dad's first car.
It's your first communion?
Yeah. And there, of course, we had always had a lot of puppies, and the dog that saved my mother's life.
Really? What happened there?
We lived on a country road about a mile from the main highway that run into Marshall, or maybe 3/4 of a mile. And there was a lot of times there were men that were riding the box cars, and but they had to be off of the train by the time the train got into Marshall.
Right.
Because otherwise they'd have been picked up and put in jail. And they usually were looking for work or looking to see, where they could get some money or whatever.
Right.
And see what was going on around. And a lot of times they would get off at that fence line and then walk straight west to our place, which was, I suppose, maybe more 3/4 of a mile. And there weren't any other farms before that fence when they were going to Marshall. And much closer, they would have been, it was probably harder to get off of it. They were getting too close to the station and would be seen and not, maybe reported, I don't know. But anyway, this guy got off of the train there and walked straight across. And my mom was peeling potatoes for dinner, and he knocked on the door, and so she went to the door. And this was kind of a shanty that was built onto the old house. And in the back of that shanty, or little room, were the cobs and different things, and a place for the dog to lay down when we'd always let him in the house. Not in the house proper, but in the shanty,
Right.
And he came to the door and he said he'd like something to eat. And she says, I'm just fixing dinner. She said, my husband will be home in a little while. If you just want to sit outside and wait, she said, then you can eat with us. Gave him all the information.
Yeah, I'm alone.
And when he said no, and he grabbed the door, he says no, and he said it really loud. He said, I want something to eat, and I want it now.
Wow.
Well, Fido was laying in the back by his regular place. He got up, he came to the screen door and stood beside my mom, showed the guy his two big tusky teeth. The guy took off, and he didn't wait for anything to eat or anything. He was gone.
Wow.
Because Fido would have literally torn him apart. But Fido sensed that from his voice that he was, hard to tell what he would have done.
Right.
Because once he got in the house, why...
Wow. So what kind of dog was he?
St. Bernard.
St. Bernard.
And the thing is, we always had a lot of dogs. Because when my dad came home from, if he'd happened to go to town or anything with grain or whatever, then he came past a big grove of trees that was maybe about 1/4 of a mile from the highway. And so often there would be puppies that would be left there. And, people that didn't want them anymore, and yet there was always people that would pick them up, or they'd get lost or something too. But, and if he happened to see a puppy when he came past that grove of trees, why, he picked them up and brought them home, because they're hungry, you've got to feed them.
Right.
And so that's what happened. He picked up Fido and brought Fido home, and that was the best dog.
Really?
It when the was time to bring the cows home for milk, he would go into the pasture, sort out the cow. He knew which ones were the cows that we milked, and he'd sort them out, bring them home, bring them up to the house or to the barn. Never bring the whole bunch up.
Right.
Just brought up the ones that he knew that would be milked, and anything too. If anything got out of the yard and started running around, he would get it so that it was up by the gate and keep it there until someone could come and open the gate and put it back in the yard, whatever it was, pigs or calves or whatever. And
Wow.
so he was just, and it wasn't that my dad trained him that way so much. It was just, an instinct that the dog had. So,
Wow. Made for you guys.
yeah.
So was his name really Fido?
Yeah, that's what we called him.
Wow.
And then sometimes there'd be a little puppy
Uh-huh.
or a little dog that had just had puppies and got the whole litter. Of course, we never had any dolls or anything to play with, so we always had puppies to play with, and
Yeah, the real thing.
yeah, could find something to make them look like you put a dress on them or whatever.
So you dressed up the puppies?
Sure.
Well, I suppose with all girls.
Yeah, and it was the times weren't all that good, and those things were all, and you didn't know about all of that, doll clothes and things like that.
Right.
And I think I must have been, well, somewhere I have it written, but I'm sure I must have been 8, 9 years old before I had my first doll. Because that was something, that was expensive to buy, and
What was the doll like?
just as I remember, just a regular doll, and my mom always had some scraps of fabric and that, and I could put together what, made it look like a skirt or a dress or whatever I could imagine. But I mean, like when Fido did that way, just came up to the door, and I was sitting out in the swing out just in front of the house, and I seen him do that, and I can still, when I think of Fido, I still can see him, how he just growled, and showed those two tusks, I guess they call them. And he would have, I'm sure he'd have literally tore the man apart if he'd have tried to come in the house and touch my mom.
So how old were you at the time?
Oh, maybe 9, 10, something like that. So.
And where were you living then?
Then between Ghent and Marshall.
Okay. So when did your family move to Illinois?
In my dad and folks moved in 1936.
Oh, okay.
And then in 1938 is when Peg was born. But we were friends with a family that had lived in Moline, worked in the factories and that, then came to farm near Ghent, and where we always went to church and everything, and farmed with his brother because they were all laid off in the factories, so there wasn't any work.
Right.
And he could help his brother, who needed a hired man, so to speak, and he could help his brother, and that way they had a place to live and food and everything. And then when the factory started up again, this guy wrote to my dad because I had no brothers, and my mother wasn't feeling too well, and Dad had more work than he could handle alone, and to hire a man, to get a hired man, sometimes that was difficult too. And being there were no boys to help and I helped what I could, and so did my mom, and that, but, it wasn't enough with the land and the animals and all, and so, Dad, my Dad's friend sent him some money to come to Moline and look at it and see what he thought, and so my dad went, and when he came back, he told my mom, he says, we're moving to Moline, he says he's going to work in the factory. And so that's what he did then.
And how old were you?
And, well, that was in 1936, so I was 21 when Peg was born in 38, so I must have been about 18, 19.
Did you want to move, or were you excited?
Just never thought about it. I wasn't going with anyone in particular, and it was a new place to go, something
big
new.
city.
And then I knew Dad's friend, he had a daughter whose name was also Madeline, and usually they called her Magdalene and Madge, but we were, so, I knew somebody.
Right.
And then I started working in the factory and everything too, because I wasn't going to school anymore. So, but I had quit high school. I had gone 2 years to high school, and then I quit high school when my mother wasn't feeling so well, and to help my dad. And then I started working in the factory, and I worked there for quite a few years.
What did you do in the factory?
Well, assembly stuff, and check. They made a lot of pieces of equipment and repair items for machinery was, and for some other things too. And they needed to be inspected to see if there was any flaws in them, or if they needed some. There's a word for it, but I can't think of it. Like if they had some rough edges to smooth, to clean that off, and so that it would fit properly, and before it was shipped. And then every summer, usually we came back to Marshall because my aunt lived there and they lived on the farm, and then we'd go and visit my grandma and grandpa Goodman, my mom's folks, who lived in Minneota, and we'd go and visit them, and we did that once a year. And that was usually the time when the factories were shut down for inventory week or something, and most everybody had their vacation at that time. And
so how did you get from Illinois to Minnesota? What kind of car did you drive?
Oh, well, our old 29 Ford.
And it fit all of you? All 6 of you in there?
You had to. I mean, there was no other choice.
Right. Without air conditioning, right?
Oh, yeah. No, and just, I don't think it had any windows or that to roll up. It was, or maybe the second car did, I don't just remember. But, and of course that was right after the Depression, because Dad bought his first car in 1929, and that was at the height of Hoover was president, and everything was going great, and so Dad bought a car, and so he must, and then was just a year or so later than when the Depression hit and everything went down, and now I guess maybe he had his second car a little bit after that, and that was an Overland, a 4-door Overland that was a little larger than the Ford that he had originally bought. It's kind of hard to, think back and.
Yeah, I don't even remember what cars we had, so.
Well, that was a big thing then, to have a car, not have to go to town, we only lived 3 miles from town, but horse and buggy was kind of slow and the rugged way to do it. It worked.
Yeah.
You know, the lumber yard always had a place where the farmers could park their buggy, so to speak, and their horses, tie them up so that, you know, they wouldn't be loose. Usually Dad took some, well, and that's what happened once too. Dad usually took a bale of, or not a bale, but some hay along, so to feed the horses when they were, well, we were doing the shopping and that.
Right.
And at one time when he came, we were ready to go home, and we went to the lumber yard, and in the hay, why, there was a nice little nest-like made, and there was a puppy in there.
So of course you took it home.
And I wonder, I think maybe that was when we got Fido that time. So, I don't know if I have this, if I told this to your mom or to somebody at one time, when my memory was a little better. But that might have been Fido.
So you got Fido as a puppy?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so there was a reason for it.
Yeah. Yeah, he looks like a good dog. I mean, that picture shows him like he owns this porch.
Yeah.
You don't even step on here and mess with my family.
Yeah.
So how old were you when the Depression hit then?
Well, that 29 was when the stock market crashed in 1917, so I was 12 then, and so then you know that'd be 13, 14
Right.
when the Depression hit. When, well, we had eggs always to sell, and of course not that we had a lot of eggs, but they'd buy some groceries, and eggs went from 30 cents a dozen, I think, to 6 cents a dozen. You didn't buy much groceries with that.
Right.
Usually just lucky to get a package of yeast.
Right.
And sometimes if you didn't have any money, you just didn't buy any groceries. But there were two stores in Marshall that always charged, never asked you for what can you pay or anything. So you usually just got the very basic, very necessary things, which was yeast and flour. And we always got sugar from Grandma Goodman because she didn't do that much baking or that, and she'd give us some sugar. And otherwise, why, the rhubarb you ate was pretty sweet, and it was, you just couldn't buy any of those things. And then when eggs went down, so did the other products. And in the fall, when Dad had to have the corn picked, why, that first fall, he paid, I forget what per bushel to pick it, and the corn at that time was sold, I think, for about $3 a bushel. Well, then when the Depression hit, that same corn was sold for less than $1 a bushel.
Wow.
But yet, you had paid that much more to have it picked, and the other expenses on it, to buy the seed corn, and but you survived. You did without. No one had any more, so could laugh about some of the things you do then to make something out of nothing, and it worked. And
like what?
And well, when they were cooking or anything, they run out of this or run out of that, and so they used some good old cream, but they didn't dare take too much because they had to sell the cream so they could pay a bill. And also at that time, that was during the Depression, there was another time when the creameries, one of the creameries in Marshall, a 5-gallon can of cream. I don't know what it sold, or was what my dad sold it for, but his bank didn't do it. But some of the banks, and I think that was what happened to Grandpa Buesing, they garnished half of the whatever if you got $5 for a can of cream, you had the bank got $2.50 of it. You got the other 2.50. That was to pay on your mortgage or whatever
Right.
you owed the bank, or
So they garnished whatever you got to make sure they got the money.
they wanted. Yeah, it wasn't much, but they got that much.
Right.
So. And that's when in Bemis, the flowers started to be put into bags that were prints, fabric that were prints. So people bought, bag, I don't remember how many pound bag of flour. I suppose it must have been maybe 25 pounds, but I'm not sure, I don't remember. But anyway, it would be a fabric that you could empty your flour out of it and use it to make a dress or whatever for your kids, shirt or whatever.
So flower dress, is that what you call them?
Well, so sometimes you've seen all the same patterns on some kids, and once in a while, and then you'd usually look for a new pattern, just to have something different. But they weren't always available. But it helped because you couldn't afford to buy the fabric in the store.
Right.
And people, maybe some of them didn't know how to sew just really well, but they did the best they could, and it worked.
So did your mom teach you how to sew?
Well, yeah, I sort of learned from her, and then I also took it in 4-H.
So what else did you do in 4-H?
Always showed a pig. My dad always, he had purebred, then he had purebred Durocs, a friend of his that he had met at the fair when he went to the fair one time from Minnesota. He had purebred Durocs, so then he got into it that way, and then they'd help each other show their animals and that, and that's what I usually showed was a gilt. That was it was the different categories, and I showed the gilt, and sometimes would help the others. Well, Annette's husband's grandpa,
Okay.
he, forget what his name is now, but anyway, he liked the way I showed pigs, so when he had some extra pigs to be showed that he had no one to show them for, why I'd show the pigs for him. So, because I had gotten showmanship different times. I had one in showmanship in 4-H. And
so what is that exactly? Showmanship?
Well, that I was watching the judge and, and had control of the pig, and the pig was trained, so to speak, and showed its best parts.
Okay.
Because sometimes you could have a pig that really wasn't, didn't really have a perfect body, but if it was trained real well, you could kind of cover up, like, or those parts of the body wouldn't be emphasized. And I mean, the judge would still notice it, but if it was so that you had control of the animal, why you were given credit for it. And Dad always showed at the state fair too then, when times got a little better, and then I went to the state fair different times, and
The Minnesota State Fair?
yeah.
So did you stay there all week? What was that like to be at the state fair?
Yeah, it was a big dormitory, hotter than hot, crowded, and everything, but, that's all there was.
Mhm.
And of course, going back to to 4-H, that's then where I met, and I think I've got that in some information that maybe your mom wrote up at one time when Grandpa was also a 4-H member, and of course, the boys always laughed at me because I was showing, and then I'd win in showmanship, or I'd show an animal and I'd get first prize, and that wasn't that wasn't what women were supposed to do or girls were supposed to do. They were supposed to be taking care of the men, and
They were just jealous that you got first place and they didn't.
sure.
So you knew Grandpa when you were
Well,
growing
that's
up?
when I met him in 4-H, and then he always showed a colt, and he had a colt show one year, and my dad said he was going to buy that colt because it matched one of our horses, and we only we had one of our horses that was quite elderly, and he knew he'd have to replace him before very long, and so he was going to buy Susie. And the only thing is, my dad was always sorry because she was the laziest horse you could have ever seen. She did not pull her end of the machinery or whatever it was that she was hooked up to. She just walked along, and one of the other horses could. But she was a perfect match for one of the horses, and well, Dad thought it was pretty neat. Well, they looked nice, together, but they didn't work so good together.
So you met Grandpa in 4-H. Did you like him then or anything, or?
No, he was a brat. They were always teasing me.
Wow. So he went to the state fair too at the same time?
I don't remember him going to the state fairs any time. This would be at the Lyon County Fair.
Okay. So Grandpa and all his brothers?
Pardon?
Grandpa and all his brothers?
Well, I just knew, a few of them. I didn't know all the family right away. Then I knew Syl, and then of course Ernie was going with Syl, and that way I knew them. I knew him rather, and that was the only one I can think of right now. That I knew first, and
So if you moved to Moline after that, when you were 19 or 20, then how did you get back to Marshall to meet
oh,
Grandpa?
well, every summer we went, during vacation time. My folks would go to Marshall to visit my aunt and uncle, and Mom's sister, of course, and my grandpa and grandma. And I went to a dance, and then I forget who I went with, someone else, or with my cousin, or just don't remember. But then anyway, Grandpa asked to take me home, and so I said it was okay. We went to a dance, I think, in Lind.
What was the dance like? Was it in a barn?
Just a regular. No, this was a regular dance hall.
Okay.
It was an old style one, but it was regular. That's what they had there a lot. And wedding receptions and that, I imagine, and big meetings and that. But anyway, Grandpa asked to take me home, and then did he borrow Ernie's car? Oh, this is kind of a blank. No. Yeah, and then we visited a while, and then of course he had to leave. And then when he went home with Ernie, I guess he had borrowed Ernie's car, and then
His brother Ernie.
yeah, and then took it back so that Ernie and Sil, because Ernie could take Sil home. And then on the way home, I think he told Ernie that he was going to marry me. And Ernie laughed. He says, "Yeah." He says, "Tell me about it."
So
Well, did you ask her? He said, or something. And our grandpa said, "No, but I'm going to marry her." And then he went to was he in the service already? Yeah, I guess he wasn't. That he would happen to be home on leave.
So how old were you then?
Well, I must have been about 26, 25, 26. Because we were married in 44, and I was 27 then, I think. 17 and 27 would be 44, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So back then, that was a little bit of an older age to get married.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever feel any pressure to
No, just
be married?
I was working and of course gave all the money that I earned to my parents, and they needed the money. I mean, when we were living in Illinois, and then Peggy was born, of course, in 38, but I mean that was just a traditional thing. Did that family that worked, why they gave all their earnings back to the family.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Grandpa was going to go overseas, why he wanted me to come out to Tacoma and to see me once more before he went overseas. And so my folks gave me the money to go out and some extra money to live on while I was there. And then when I got out there, then he had never really said much about it, if anything before that. He wrote all the time, and I wrote, and it was the same. I'd always write too, and he, when I got there, then and of course he was Lutheran and I was Catholic, and that was a time when a lot of that was no unless they had become a Catholic. And it was no mixed marriages, or that was very much approved of. A few priests would, but most of them not. And then when I got out there, then he said he wanted to get married before he went overseas. And I said, well, that's going to be a little bit more complicated, because I said, you aren't Catholic, and we'll have to talk to a priest about that. And I think their date was already set to leave for overseas, so there wasn't a lot of time. And then he says, that's all done. He says, I talked to the chaplain or whoever it was from his group, and he took all of the lessons and everything, and he knew what it was all about. And he says, all I have to have done yet is to be baptized. And he was baptized in the Lutheran church, but then they do a little different service, or an extra service. I've forgotten now what it's called. And he said, so, and then their orders were changed. They were supposed to go to Japan, and then it was changed, so they had, this was March, and they didn't leave until in May or June. Well, I think they were crossing the Atlantic on D-Day, the 6th of June. So that way they had more time. And then and then he had a chance to go home. So then I met his mom and dad and family and all. Well, and I had known when I lived in Moline, why he had come down once, and I had met Hank and his family, because they lived in Walcott, Iowa.
Right. Yeah, I've been out there.
Yeah.
So the first time you went to Tacoma, is that the time you got married?
Mm-hmm.
So you went out there and...
Literally had to change everything. Man, I had to look for a wedding dress, a hat, and just everything. And that was in rationing. And, well, I didn't think it could have a reception or anything. We stayed at a hotel-like, and where a lot of the wives or girlfriends of the servicemen that were going overseas, they were coming from all over. And then there was one gal that worked there, and she had used her tickets, or what you call it, that she got for sugar to make us a wedding cake. She had made it herself, used her own. They got tickets that they could buy so much sugar, and that's all the sugar they could have then for another month.
Right.
So she got some from a friend or something, and also. But anyway, she made and wouldn't take anything for it, because it was a place where everybody usually met after they were through with whatever they were doing, and I was working in the candy factory, and we'd come there and socialize a little bit, and so that way I had a real wedding cake too.
Wow. So how did you find, what kind of dress did you get?
I still have it.
Really?
Yeah, it's in my cedar chest. It was just I suppose it was a rayon dress with I don't know if you can see it on my picture.
Yeah.
And it was sort of a green color, which I never wore really. And my hat was brown, because it was the only one that really fit, and the rest of them were just, too close to my face and that.
Right.
But brown wasn't too big, but I had never worn brown before. But it blended okay with my hair. Was kind of, not brown and not, I forget what the name of the color of my hair is.
Like auburn?
Auburn, that's it. Sort of an auburn, a little bit of reddish tint to it.
Kind of like mine?
Yeah.
A little reddish?
Yeah. Maybe just a tad lighter.
Can we see your dress right now? Do you have it here, or no?
It's, but see, that hat was a nice, had a nice frame, and it worked good.
Yeah, it really frames your face
and
well.
Then it blended in with Grandpa's uniform and all too. Mine was just a little bit snug, but otherwise it wasn't too bad.
So when was the last time you tried it on?
When we were still living at the house.
Okay.
When I was still living there. And
wow. This is neat. Still in good shape.
yeah. Well, I wore it a lot, for dress up, because you just didn't have that many clothes. And
yeah. So there There's Grandma's wedding dress.
Kind of wrinkled.
Yeah. I think it's neat you still have it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so tiny. You were a
Well,
fit woman back then. Well, you always have been, actually.
I weigh a little bit more now, but some of it is medication, and then I haven't watched my posture as close as I used to, because that was a thing from my mom. You know, sit straight, walk straight,
Yeah.
and you know, that. Well, I mean, you know, they came from nothing, and well, worked in the packing plant for 10 cents an hour when she was 14 years old, and 12-hour days and all, and so that was one thing. If you stood straight or anything, why you were proud of yourself.
Right.
You know, if you let yourself slouch in that way, then you didn't think much of yourself.
Right.
That was his theory, the belief or whatever. And so any pictures you'd see of my mom from years ago, and even her later years, you know, she was always sitting quite straight or standing quite straight, and my aunt too. So, and then they were Belgium amongst Germans and French and everything at the packing plant, so they had to outdo them to show them that Belgians could work too and save their money too. And although they had to give it all to Grandpa, but you know, it was something that they were in control of.
Right. So, were your parents disappointed that they couldn't be at your wedding?
I don't know. There wasn't much wrote about it. They sent some extra money. Mm-hmm. And that.
Did Grandpa ask their permission, or did he write a letter and ask them if he could marry you?
I just told him that, you know, they had met Carol and Grandpa, and well, I was out there, and that's what I said, and you know, and I wasn't a kid. Mm-hmm. I was 27, so they accepted it.
And they knew the family, too, right?
What?
They knew the family?
Oh, just kind of.
Yeah.
You know, my dad met Grandpa Buesing, of course, when he was dealing with the horse, and seeing him in town once in a while. But they were German, you know, and usually, well, and I guess it's still kind of that way. There's a lot of segregation, not that other people aren't good enough, but it's just kind of automatic. Mm-hmm. That they would help each other, but I mean, just to socialize and that, they just didn't intermix that much for socializing.
Right.
So.
Neat. So tell me about the cedar chest again. It was the first thing you bought with your money?
Yeah.
So how old is it? Or maybe what year do you think you bought it, and then we'll figure out how old it is.
I probably bought it in 1940, 42, somewhere in there.
Wow. Did someone make it for you, or?
No. And somewhere I've got it wrote down what I paid for it, but I don't just remember where that is. Then there's that Grandma Koopman crocheted.
Yeah.
But this is the only place where this would fit. And
yeah, it's a really neat chest.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, and it's an authentic one. Some of them aren't all the real cedar or whatever. And supposedly this one is 100%.
Wow. Yeah, it's neat. That is a good color for you.
Pardon?
That is a good color on you. And now let's get the skirt up. With its tiny little 23-inch waistline.
Was that 23?
23.
You did a lot of walking because otherwise it was take the bus and that cost money and you didn't have a car.
Yeah.
And if you did have a car, it was to go quite a distance. It wasn't just a. But the bus was available, and you could go to the town stores and everything with the bus, and then they had transfers. You could take, one bus so far and then transfer to another one to go to another area. Which they should go back to a little bit more with the price of gas and everything now.
Yeah. Keep people in better shape.
Sure.
Wow. Well, this looks like a fun skirt to dance in.
Yeah.
Did you guys go dancing that night?
Yeah,
After
well,
the-
it was usually a dance at the, at the place.
Uh-huh. Cool. Maybe just hold up the skirt now. I don't think we're going to be able to get them both together. Unless, do you have a safety pin? You can pin it. So do you remember how much the dress cost?
Well, it was less than $20.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Did someone make it for you, or did you
No,
just buy
I
it?
just went to the store, and one of the guy's wives went along with me, and
Mm-hmm. Wow.
and there wasn't much color choice. There's a lot of dark colored browns and grays and stuff. But
Mm-hmm. So, so it's kind of a flippy skirt. You guys went dancing afterwards?
well, I wore this,
Uh-huh.
So and it's the skirt is plenty wide for dancing or whatever. And Grandpa never did a lot of the fancy steps. He pretty much was a waltzer and a two-step.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he ever really polkaed.
Yeah. What was your favorite kind of music to dance to?
Well, all of your old-time music that they have now by the now there's a few of them coming back to it now, but to me a lot of the music now is just a lot of noise and
Yeah.
it don't make much sense with the words in that, but yeah. I can't think of names,
Like big band,
the big bands and
Glenn Miller and
yeah.
that.
And the gal that does the kitchen, the dining room downstairs, I gave her a bunch of my tapes because I don't use them anymore to speak of, and then she plays them a lot of times at noon.
Oh, neat.
And then a lot of them said, well, I remember going to those dances when they played that all the time, and it's kind of fun. Guy Lombardo and we went to a dance in Tyler, I believe it was, one year, when Lawrence Welk played there.
Really? In Tyler, where is it, Minnesota?
That's in Minnesota. I think it was in Tyler or one of those, what's another town around there?
I don't know.
He didn't come to Marshall, or was it Lind? I don't know. He was in one of the small towns, and everybody was so surprised that he would come to a small town to play, but of course he was from South Dakota himself, and
Right.
but he got a big crowd, and that was the the dance that he was standing up by his orchestra, directing it, and Clarence and Verna were dancing, and it was a waltz, and he came down off of the stand and took Verna to dance with and gave them his direction stick to Clarence to go up on the stage and direct the band.
Wow.
So that was, quite a neat thing.
So did Verna say he danced better than Clarence, or did she just leave that
No,
quiet?
That was, she just kind of enjoyed it and didn't expect it. And he just tapped her on the shoulder, and then he went for, did that to a lot of people. It was something that he communicated that way and made them feel welcome and at ease and all. And like he wasn't just a big-time band, he was an ordinary person.
Right. Wow.
Then another dance that we went to was Hank and Agnes's 50th wedding anniversary, I think. That was in Walcott, Iowa. And of course, their son, what was their son's name? But anyway, out on the floor for the first dance was Hank and Agnes, Dallas and his wife, and then their son and his wife, and their grandson and granddaughter. And those little kids, those two little grandsons of Hank's, they danced just as good as anybody did.
Really?
Doing a waltz and that. It was just so much fun to see. So.
Cool. You can go ahead. So all your neighbors spoke.
I see, when I was growing up, all our neighbors were Belgian, and my folks could speak English, enough to be sociable. But that was the only language I heard or learned mostly when I was growing up. So when I started school, the first English I learned was saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And when they wanted to quit saying that, they didn't have time and it was not necessary and all that, I wrote to quite a few superintendents and school principals and saying why it was important that it would continue, that it didn't take that much time to say it.
This was just a few years ago, probably.
That was even when we lived in Grandpa and I, when we lived in Clara City. I wrote the principal there too, and because everybody was in their home room and then would go on to classes, so they didn't have 2 minutes in their home room to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
But they've got now that they'd have time to goof off in the hallways before they got to class.
Right.
And they changed it. Most of them changed it, but I think I wrote, must have been about 3 letters for sure. And one time I gave a talk at the American Legion meeting about the importance of the pledge, what I felt was the importance of the pledge. So.
So So that was the first English you learned.
That was the first English that I learned, that I learned all of the words to it, and
Mm-hmm.
and I learned them quite fast. I was proud of myself because I learned them so well. And that's at a friend's place in Cottonwood, where he had Duroc hogs too, and my dad and him showed together. And see, this is one of our cars.
Wow, so it didn't have a top, huh?
No,
You had a convertible before they were
Or-
cool.
no, I think that was our friend's car or our neighbor's son's car. Hired man's car by 1926.
So with the open top cars, what did you do in the wintertime?
I don't really remember. We didn't have an open top, but I suppose he had it because he was alone and was something fancy. And
Yeah. So what's that with the horse and here?
well, that was a load of corn that they had picked.
Oh, okay. That's how you took it into the co-op?
No, no, it had to be unloaded and stored in the corn bin granary, and 1935. And then in the spring, the corn would be shelled, and through the winter it would be shelled to use as feed.
Mm-hmm.
Some you'd use as ear corn, and sell some for whatever.
Is that you sitting on the post?
Yeah, I guess so. See, that's Fido.
Oh. Did he go to Moline with you guys?
No. No, I think he was already. I know. We gave him to a Dad's friend, car playing friend, and he was always. He would help with everything. He would do the chores and watch the cattle and that, and then he would go and lay on the spot, their driveways that came up into the yard where the house and the barn was. Then he'd lay on a spot there, watching to wait for us to come. He had rode back.
Really? So is it fun going to see him again when you got back?
Well, when we went back, we stopped, and then after a few years, he did die.
Yeah.
Can't get that in there.
Yeah, those are tricky. That's a neat picture.
See, this was the entrance to that porch when that guy was standing here, and it was that door that Mom had opened.
Oh, okay.
I can't see what that is.
Oh, it's a pig. Yeah, it's kind of dark right there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, now I see it.
It's like you're chugging a beer there.
Yeah.
I wonder what that is. Oh, the electricity's back on.
Yep.
All right.
I just heard the refrigerator run.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.